Do you have a video of that avalanche?
We were on the Today Show from it.
Right.
And there was a clip of that avalanche. So
okay. Yeah, I didn't get to see that. So okay, that's awesome. All right.
Matt Lauer and Katie Couric interviewed us.
Wow. Insane. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So now you go skiing again in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
You get the COVID.
Got the COVID.
You knew you had the COVID, right?
On
the plane.
When we were in Italy, right when we had gotten there, I got a call from AJ, my then girlfriend, now fiance, and she actually said to me, she goes, "Do you know about this thing called COVID or the coronavirus?" And I'm like, "I know nothing about this." And she's like, "It's in northern Italy where you are. Be careful." And we didn't really take it too seriously, simply because A, we didn't know anything about this. B, that we're all healthy guys. We're outdoors. We're skiing. We really aren't around too many people, short of getting in a gondola with 50 people in the morning on the very first lift up. And we just weren't that concerned, frankly. And 3 days in, I ended up getting flu-like symptoms. There was a couple of the other guys had some, cold issues, flu-like symptoms as well. Wasn't really serious at all. We actually sat down at happy hour and were making jokes about this thing. And 3 days prior to us leaving, 3 of the guys on the trip were from Sweden, and they left 3 days early. One of the guys who had the flu, supposedly, ended up going into the hospital in Sweden and was sent home with the flu. So he reached back out to us. We were confirmed that we had the flu. So we ended up, when we left Italy, we were traveling through Munich. And the morning of our drivers coming to pick us up to take us to the airport, I woke up, went downstairs, met everybody in the lobby, and found out that one of my buddies actually checked into the hospital in Munich with double pneumonia. And so he missed our flight. 3/4 of the way through the flight, I get a text message that he tested positive for COVID. So we ended up landing. I called AJ and basically told her, stay the hell away from me. I'm going to quarantine at home. Got to my house. I called my doctor, who then called the CDC. They reached out to me and said, we're going to send a guy over in a van with hazmat gear to come pick you up, take you to our office and test me. I mean, they had no tests, available, randomly available. I tested, and 24 hours later, I was positive with COVID.
And then they induced you in a coma. How long after that?
So that was on March 2nd that I tested positive for COVID. On March 4th, a friend of mine had called me and started asking me questions of, where did I go? Who picked me up to take the test? And I had such brain fog at that particular time, and I was gurgling in my own lungs. And he goes, dude, you need to go to the hospital. And I was pushing back. He got another friend of ours on the phone that's a retired surgeon. And he ended up calling around to all these different hospitals, Cedars, USC, UCLA, St. John's. Nobody would take a COVID patient at that particular point in time. And they said, well, go to the emergency room. Well, if you go to the emergency room, you infect everybody.
Right.
So that wasn't an option. And then when he contacted St. Joe's Hospital in Burbank, they welcomed me with open arms. And he called me up and he's like, hey, I got it ready. And I kind of pushed him back and said, hey, if later on this evening it really gets worse, I'll call you back and I'll pull the trigger. Well, when I hung up the phone, my very first concern wasn't me. It was my dog. So I called around to get my dog taken care of. I called my trainer. I called my dog trainer. I called my housekeeper who was taking care of my dog when I was in Italy. Nobody would touch the dog based on the fact of being exposed to COVID. We didn't know anything about COVID at this point. We didn't know about how it lives on surfaces, how it may live on the dog's fur. And so I had an understanding, obviously, but she was my biggest concern. And so when 5 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't breathe. And I called him up and I'm like, let's pull the trigger. And I put Bear in her crate. And I said, we'll get you out of here. And I had tears in my eyes. And the ambulance showed up and I was on the phone with John, the surgeon. And I handed the fire department my phone. And he was talking to the ambulance guys and just coaching them all on what's going on, making sure that they had hazmat gear and they were prepared. And they took me to the hospital on morning of March 5th. And I was intubated on March 7th. They came into my room and they said, your oxygen saturation is so low that we need to intubate you. Well, I had no idea what that was all about. In fact, I called John to say they want to intubate me and, should I do this? And I handed the phone again to my doctor who talked to John. And he got back on the phone with me and he's like, let's go. You need it or you're going to die. And I turned to one of the nurses and I said, I don't want to die. And she says, I promise you, I won't let you die.